When EA's Star Wars Battlefront was announced in 2015, I can say, like many Battlefront fans, that it was about damn time that someone was making a new Battlefront game. There was a surge of childlike happiness that hit me when I first heard the news, as if a best friend that I haven't seen in years was finally returning home. But little did I know that this friend was not going to return the same as I remembered. I should say that I thoroughly loved the Star Wars Battlefront games made by Pandemic Studios. Both games did a great job providing fun multiplayer and allowing players to play through the original trilogy and prequels while listening to all their favorite Star Wars tunes from John Williams. But sadly, we never got a new Battlefront game from Pandemic, and Pandemic closed their studios. I wonder who shut down Pandemic? Yes. Alright, they have a trend of shutting down studios that I love, like that one. 2015 Star Wars Battlefront promised many things to the players, and I wasn't the happiest player when I finally got my hands on the game. I do not need to state the obvious that this felt like something very different and not like the prior Battlefront games. Like most, I was thoroughly disappointed in the single-player offerings that this game provided. There were training missions you could complete. These were fun, short missions that started getting you accustomed to the gameplay and vehicles. They were enjoyable, but the amount of them available was criminally low. It was later revealed that the story campaign was cut to get the game out before Star Wars Episode 7. But I still feel like they should have had more of those training missions. It would have been better if they had more missions to play and certain medals you had to earn from playing them that resulted in, say, cool unlocks for the play. Yeah, remember when you played a game and got awesome unlocks? I do. I want it back. This would kind of give us a Rogue Squadron unlocking system where replay was encouraged because you would want to unlock all the cool ships in the game by earning all the highest medals on every level. This same process could have been used with Battlefront. They could have had a few missions that featured some of the big battles from the trilogy. I know games have done that before, but this would have been enjoyable, especially with the modern tech at hand here. I will say I got most of my value out of the co-op survival mode, which was a simple two-person survival mode where players just work together to beat 15 waves of enemies. This was loads of fun, but the game only had 4 maps at launch. 4! That's it, just 4 at launch. We needed to like quadruple that. It was a huge missed opportunity to not use every multiplayer map available as maps for co-op. I mean, I don't make video games, but you already made the maps. Apply the AI logic to those maps for the co-op and have at it. There you go, you got more co-op maps. That other co-op mode was just terrible though, where you just played through like a series of maps and you basically you did kill confirmed where you killed AI bots and you had to collect like gold coins every time you killed an enemy. It was unfair, like the AI would just swarm you and take you out so fast, and there was really no way to be able to combat them. I know there's someone in the comment section was like, well, you should have played the level like this and went to this corner and hit down and cried until the next Battlefront game comes out. But either way, that mode sucked, and there was like so many maps for that mode. Like, why did you do that mode? I would have preferred more survival stuff. Then I tried the multiplayer. Overall, I was enjoying the casual shooting of the game. A lot of that was because of the excellent visuals and sound effects. You were effectively put into the universe of the films. I felt like DICE nailed the atmosphere in that respect. Well, until you started paying attention to the soundtrack and started to recognize that they used some music from John Williams' scores and some original music that was made specifically for the game. Do you want to know which one sounded better? For me, this doesn't really make any sense. Because if you have the license to use John Williams music for your Star Wars game, use John Williams music for your Star Wars game. Now I can understand if you had a campaign and you were telling your own personal story and you wanted to have specific music and not just callbacks to other Star Wars movies. I get that, make your own original soundtrack. But here we didn't have a campaign, it was effectively a multiplayer game with some co-op, so it's really just a celebration of the original trilogy if you want to think of it that way. So in that, celebrate it by only using John Williams and don't use, oh, I'm pretending to be John Williams. Oh right, I was talking about the multiplayer. I did have some enjoyment, but I didn't really get into it. The land vehicles were not that fun to control. I didn't particularly care for the AT-ST walkers, and using a speeder bike was just weird because they put all these trees in your way on Endor, and I couldn't do anything with it. I would go speeding off and then I would hit a tree, and maybe I just suck at using the vehicles. That could be true. I did find using the starfighter to shoot enemies like while you're doing ship-to-ship combat fun and casual, but when you had to take out enemies on the ground with some of the bigger maps, I couldn't see anybody, and right when I was able to finally see that stormtrooper I had to take out, I hit the ground and I blew up. Like, I didn't feel like there was any good way to kind of fly around and be able to take that stuff out. Yet again, I could suck at flying just like I sucked at the land vehicles. So on a whole, I was just frustrated, and as a result, I focused on what the game did not include rather than what it did. So I began to not like the game and I stopped playing it to go play something else. Then a few months later, one of my best friends encouraged me to play the game with him. Well, more like nagging, but we'll say encouraged. So I entertained the idea. It had been a while and I figured why not? I still saw the flaws that I saw before, but I began to see the game that was present in front of me instead of focusing on what the game didn't have. This sort of allowed me to remove my expectations that I had from the game and begin to just look at the game from a different perspective. Since I wasn't focused on what the game did wrong, I began taking enjoyment in what they did right, or having fun. I found that the game became more fun in the smaller maps and modes like cargo, supply drop, and droid run. Sure, the multiplayer needed more unlocks and customization options, and I felt like the bigger modes were just not as enjoyable as the smaller ones, so pretty much I stuck with the smaller modes. I started having an enjoyable time with the game. Some of the best modes for the game came with the DLC release. Disclaimer: I do feel like this game should not have had any map DLC. All of the new additions to like modes, maps, and all that stuff, that should have been free, because you don't want to segment your community, especially in a game that's so focused on its multiplayer. You want to keep everyone together, not drop them off and start putting them into these individual pockets of people. Oh, I only own DLC 1 and 2, I can't play with the third people. Oh, I only have the first one, can't play with these people. Or I own none and there's no one to play with. You can't do that with your multiplayer game, especially if you want it to have some really good longevity to it. Now, after having said that, I will say this. I did try the first DLC on one of its free DLC weekends. And this is where I found probably one of my favorite modes for Battlefront, and that was Extraction. So Extraction mode was extremely intense. As the rebels, you get a hovercraft of cargo, and you have to get it to the extraction point. The cargo would follow a set path, and the rebels would have to then kind of click a button on it to get it to start going. Basically, you had to get to the extraction point before the time was out, and then you won. The rebels would gain additional time as the cargo progressed along its rails. The Imperials had to stop the cargo until the time ran out. Since the focus of the mode was on how far the cargo progressed or did not progress, it sort of forced teamwork to happen, which is really nice, because in a lot of these games, you just go online and everyone's running around like chickens with their head cut off, just shooting everybody and not focusing on the objective. It can get kind of annoying. I did like that Extraction forced that teamwork on your players. And since the cargo followed a set path, there were these really good points that it would hit that would create these very frenetic choke points that would happen. It would get extremely chaotic, lots of fun, lots of grenades going on, lots of kills, you're getting your KDR up, it was intense. I also love this mode because it kept it small and it kept it focused. There were no land or air vehicles, it was all foot soldier sections with limited hero classes, and that was it. This mode, I got a lot of my mileage out of Battlefront by playing this mode. The second DLC was in Bespin, and I didn't particularly find it very captivating and the weakest of the 4 DLCs. But I will say that though Bespin wasn't that great, the Death Star DLC, the third one, was a huge treat when that came out. So for the Death Star DLC, it was really cool because it was the first time for Battlefront where it had its first multi-leveled mode with Battle Station. Battle Station was really frickin' cool. There was a lot of hype behind this DLC because, well, I mean, it's the Death Star, and it's one of the coolest moments in A New Hope, and then you can say the same thing about Return of the Jedi. You want to be able to experience that stuff. If any of you have played Rogue Squadron 2, and when you were able to go through the first trench run, It's amazing. It's so good. It's a multi-leveled part in that game, and it was so cool and so satisfying when you finally were able to blow up the Death Star. And then it got even crazier for when they did it for Return of the Jedi. I remember that being really tough. But too many tangents on Rogue Squadron. With Battle Station, what was really neat about it is, so for the first area, there's a Star Destroyer, and as the Rebels, you're trying to take down that Star Destroyer, damage up its shields, and then blow it up. And then the Imperials are trying to defend it. This is really cool because now the whole mode's based on this timer, and if you run out of time, the Imperials win. Rebels keep gaining time as they keep winning in the different multi-leveled areas. So you really want to get through the first 2 sections as quickly as possible so you can get to the last part, which is really tough because that's the trench run. So in the first area, it's just typical starfighting stuff. It's all in space. It's a lot of fun. There's no ground combat for this first bit. But you can get a bunch of heroes, and taking on the Star Destroyers is a lot of fun because you get the 2 up top and you get to get the 1 at the bottom. The one little bit that I think is really cool, and it's kind of funny to be able to relive this a bit, is in Return of the Jedi. I always love the part where the A-Wing kind of goes out of control and takes out the Super Star Destroyer by blowing up the bridge. Well, you can kind of do that here. You're not taking on the Super Star Destroyer, you are taking on a Star Destroyer. And once the shields are down, you got to take out the bridge. And a couple of times I have, just for fun, because we were running low on time, I just took my A-Wing and beelined it right for the bridge and just blew up right on it. And surprisingly, you do a lot of damage for sacrificing yourself and blowing up the bridge. Like they take a lot of damage. I mean, you get like a hit, but whatever, for the rebellion. So this bit's really cool. So once you take out the Star Destroyer, then it goes into a nice little cutscene, and I think this is really cool. So it's like, I got a little victory for this first bit, get ready for the next part. So right after this, the Rebels then go flying into the Death Star, and they get to the Death Star, and now they have to rescue R2-D2. They have to get the plans to be able to figure out where to blow this thing up. So now it's an on-foot section. So what's cool about this on-foot section is that the Rebels are trying to then rescue R2-D2, and R2-D2 is surrounded by all the Imperial players. The Imperial players have R2-D2 locked down. So you got to go in there and try and get R2-D2. And what's neat about this part, it's all on foot, so I like that. It's a little bit of a change of pace, and at the same time you can use a bunch of the heroes that are provided in all the different modes. You can have Chewbacca running around, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, all that fun stuff. And what's great is once you get to R2-D2, you can actually play as R2-D2. It's not an AI. And he's got a little zapper, and you can start zapping Imperials right in the ass. So you gotta make way for the transport so you can get out of there. This part is also really intense, and depending on which way you go with R2-D2, you can really find yourself in an easy spot where the Imperials can't come at you, or in a really tough spot where the Imperials have R2-D2 locked down. So you kind of got to use a bit of strategery, let's just say. And this bit I do like, a lot of fun, like I said before. Now, once you get R2-D2 out of there, this is where things get even more exciting. So you're rewarded once you beat this section as the Rebels, or if you lose as the Imperials, you get then another cutscene. And now they initiate the trench run. So you're right on the surface of the Death Star, you're fighting off against all these TIE fighters, and the game randomly assigns people to then go in and try and blow up the Death Star. So they go in for their trench run. Now you have to protect everybody. If you're the Rebels Imperials, this is your last chance or you're gonna lose the match. And I really love this stuff. It's so intense and it's so rewarding, because what's cool is you've had little victories as you went along. So you beat the first section, okay, all right, now I have to do the next thing. But it's all part of one big battle. It's kind of like being in one really awesome prolonged action sequence. And what I mean by that is when you watch a really good action picture with like those big battles, say like Kingdom of Heaven or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, there's these little fights that happen within those battles, those little moments of victory, whether it's for like a side character that fought this other enemy or for the main character taking on some other foes. There's a lot of little stories within the big battle, and that helps the big battle be refreshing and fun throughout the whole experience. And the same thing is applied with this mode. I felt this was really great, because what's awesome is it's extremely satisfying to finally get there as the Rebels, especially when you don't have a lot of time left and you have to blow up that Death Star. It really does feel like there's stakes. It's the first time in a multiplayer game where I actually felt like I was living out this set piece from the film. And I did have this happen. I had almost no time left on my team, And this one guy was able, like, there was just seconds left in the match and able to blow up the Death Star. And it's this moment of, whew, we did it. And what's cool is that's what they felt like in the movie. They were like, holy, like Luke, I remember seeing his face. He's like, holy shit, I didn't think I was going to be able to do this. But I used that force thing you've been talking about and it was okay. But it's just one of those things. It's like, oh wow, this multiplayer mode really made me feel like I'm in the films. I'm experiencing the films. And usually I get that stuff from a single player game, not from a multiplayer game, not usually. And here I thought they did a really good job with it. I really enjoyed playing this mode for all the various reasons that I listed. I think they did a good job. Now I will say that it is more fun to play this mode as the Rebels than as the Imperials. Because even if you're as the Imperials, you don't want to win right away. It's too quick. This is supposed to be this grand overarching event that you're participating in. It's not like, oh, we got to the Star Destroyer part and, well, we just beat the Rebels there. That's not as fun. You want to, even if the Rebel team is kind of sucking and you're playing as the Imperial, just let them win, let them win. Let them get to the last part, but not too much. We want to make sure that they're getting there. But it's that much more satisfying to stop them at the last part, because that last part, there's so much stakes to it. There's so much at stake, and it's great. But overall, I really enjoyed Battle Station. I thought this was really, really awesome. And they did a similar thing for Rogue One's DLC, but I will say that the Star Wars one had a huge sense of nostalgia, and I think that's why I loved it more than Rogue One's. While Rogue One's was good, it's rooted in my past. I grew up with Star Wars, and they were able to let me experience a set piece in a different way that I haven't seen before. So I really like that. So why am I talking about a game that came out in 2015? Well, I wanted to use this as a good example of trying to look at a game from a different perspective. A bit about how I first saw the game as what I wanted it to be, or maybe how I expected it to be, and then how the game didn't deliver. But with time spent away from the game, it helped to remove those expectations I have and see the game for what it is. I still see the laundry list of flaws that this game has, and there's many areas to improve upon, but there's also areas that you can really enjoy with this game. And I think by taking that break and by going in and trying to remove the expectations and basically trying to find something to like rather than focus in on what the game didn't have, it allowed me to enjoy some time with the game. Now, I do think it is very important for gamers and everyone to point out potential areas to improve so that a developer, a publisher, and game series can all grow. I think that criticism is very important. But I also think it is equally as important to point out the areas that a game does right or does a good job with, and that it's completely okay to enjoy a game that has flaws. This was just my experience with Battlefront. I'd love to hear your stories and experiences with the game in the comments below. What were your thoughts on the original release? Did those opinions change over time? What do you hope that Battlefront 2 does better than Battlefront 1? And why the hell wasn't Obi-Wan a playable hero in the game? I mean, thank God that they took the time to give us the hero of the rebellion, Nine Nubbin. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you'd like to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.